Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I am your host, Pastor Nathan, here not as usual with my co-host, Pastor Matt, but a very special guest indeed, my amazing wife, Alexis.
Hi, guys. I was going to say Pastor Nathan's wife, but I'll spare you that.
You can say whatever. You can say that if you want.
Yeah.
I like it.
I loved when you elongated like forever that one episode.
There was, I've done a few where
and
it's
just
like
the annoyance on Pastor Matt's face.
Well, Pastor Matt is at camp this week. It is the week of summer camp, which also means our two big kids have been gone all week too.
Yes, our oldest two are gone for the week. The house has been quiet, and I have felt like inexplicably sad for a couple of the days, and I think it's because they're gone.
Yeah, it is kind of sad.
I miss them, but I know they're having fun.
I'm sure they're having fun as well.
Yeah.
But we thought, we've got to make sure we get a new episode for you, our faithful viewers and listeners. So here we are ready to bring you all of the application into, the way your faith can apply into your life, how you can live out both this following Jesus, getting closer to him, and a world that's kind of crazy. But before we jump into all of our normal stuff, as always, if you have not done so already, please take a minute, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you might have downloaded this. And please, you can also email podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. Be part of the conversation. We will have a little bit of listener mail later. Now, all that to say, let's start with what I always like to start with, which is the news, what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to talk about is the continued implosion of Biden as a candidate, because it's that time of year. Politics are happening. The thing that was really, I don't know if funny is the right word, but they've got a press conference scheduled tonight. So by the time you're listening and watching this has already happened. You already know how it went.
You can tell us.
You can email podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know what you thought. He's got this big press conference, and the staff and the official press secretary, all those people, they're referring to it as his big boy conference.
That's so already so patronizing. I mean, whatever your politics are, Joe Biden has been in politics forever. Yeah. There's got to be some level of kindness and respect and decency for, if not him, the position. That's so, you got your big boy pants on.
You're right. Or it sounds like, as somebody else said, it sounds like they're going to let him tie his shoes or something, and he's going to show us that and how good he can do.
Shoes. Yes.
So it's just kind of weird. And again, we've had episodes on this. We'll probably have another one. I think I'm going to try to get Mike Pence back on to talk about, again, a follow-up, has our positions changed on what it looks like, politics as a Christian. I just saw a TikTok today where there was a guy who was like, I'm a super conservative, super Republican, but I have to vote for Joe Biden because I can't stand Trump. And I'm like, and then he said, everybody brings up abortion, but how can we impose this morality on others? And I'm like, you weren't really that conservative. And even as a Christian, he said he was a Christian. And I'm like, every law is imposing morality on somebody, right? We have laws that say you can't murder somebody. Now, that's not just a Christian moral tradition, but that is something that Christians believe. Murder's wrong.
Right.
And so by criminalizing, walking over your neighbor and punching him in the face or killing him, have we imposed our morality on people? Well, maybe, but that's okay. Right. I don't know. It was just weird to me. I can get not wanting to vote for Trump because I've struggled with that as well. I can, and how to vote and if I should vote, that I get, but to support somebody and say they actually support your Christian values better is tricky to me.
Yeah, it's tough. I have very few political opinions, especially not going to air all of that on a podcast, but I'll just share the one thing I've put out. Okay. Is on social media, and it's a meme of a woman going down to the election place. You've seen it. And she's, the first woman is just yelling at this other woman at the poll place. And she's like, we should abolish the two-party system and unite under the monarchy of King Jesus. And then it shows a picture of the poll woman just oh my gosh. But honestly, as a Christian, that's how I feel. And I feel like for a long time, that's how I've participated in the political sphere. It's Jesus first, honestly. I think it's very easy, and I have compassion for it when it happens because it's so easy, but we can flip that where our politics become number one.
Right.
And that's idolatry, right? So Jesus has to be first. And then my second thing is just remain involved. I mean, the reason we have the two candidates we have right now, we voted these knuckleheads
That is a good, I like knuckleheads.
up to where they are, right? So if you disagree with what you're seeing in either party, in any of the parties, well, we voted or didn't vote. So that's on us. And it is a privilege to live in a country where we can participate. So, yeah.
That is true. I like that we have that privilege of being able to have our voice heard. And there's times where I think that people think like, well, as a, or I've been told, I've heard people say this, like, as a Christian, you should not try to vote what you believe. And I'm like, but everybody votes that's the whole point of a representative system, is that we're trying to vote what we.
It's like when people say, separation of faith and state. What is it? Sorry.
Separation of church and state. And a lot of people say that's in the Constitution, which it's not.
Right.
It was in a letter from Thomas Jefferson, but
they apply it to how you vote. And it's like, how do you strip your heart, your soul, your morality? How do you turn that off just to vote? And then, like, it doesn't work.
And then the other thing that, real quick, in the news as we're talking about this, I keep hearing, and I haven't read enough about this. I'll start with that. But I keep hearing all these people are like in panic mode over this Project 2025 thing. Have you heard about this at all?
I saw it on social media, but like most things, I didn't look deeply at that.
So everybody, like, on the left side, the more liberal side, is like, we've got to stop this Project 2025 because it's going to ruin everything. It's going to destroy all this stuff. And like, tragically, I've seen people are like, I'm probably going to end my life if Trump wins because of Project 2025 and how bad it is. Yeah.
So what is it?
So there's this. Okay. So the funny thing is it's not even Trump's platform. He hasn't endorsed it. Now there's, some sketchiness here. He's like, I don't even know who made it, where a lot of people he knows made it, whether he knew that or not, but he has not endorsed it. And in fact, he said a lot of stuff against it. So there's all these different, you want to call them like think tanks. They're just like groups that put forth ideas about stuff, right? You just bring in consultants and people to try to like formulate ideas. There's thousands of these groups in our country.
Is this a think tank?
This is our think tank, the Discovery Think Tank. Woo! I mean, I'm sure there's something you have to do to officially be one, but yes.
We're officially declaring. I'm just kidding.
I declare think tank.
Yes.
Now,
done.
And so there's this one called the Heritage Foundation. It's a very well-known conservative one. And they basically put forth this like 500-page document of the stuff they would like to see happen. Some of it, we'd probably all agree with it. Some of it might seem extreme. But regardless of that, it's like Trump has his own like platform paper that you can read. It's called like Order 47 or something. It's very weird.
That's very Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something 47. I don't remember, because he would be the 47th president. I think that's how they call it that. Anyway, he's got his own paper. And so even if you are terrified of this Project 2025 thing, it's just one of a million different like platform proposal things out there that people are coming up with. Okay. And so I think because there is some pretty extreme stuff in it, there's a lot of people jumping on this as a way to then try to link it to Trump and use this as a reason to be like, don't vote Trump because of this scary thing, even though in reality, he's not connected to it at all.
Have you listed out any of the scary or conservative things in it? Like, why are people afraid?
I don't really.
This is kind of a rabbit hole, but now I'm interested.
It is. All right. So Project 2025 worst parts. We'll Google that because that should tell us what is happening. All right. It's like 7 months ago, somebody posted, and that's the thing. This has been around for a while and everyone's just freaking out now.
Sure.
This is now 8 months ago. What do you all think of Project 2025? I'm feeling scared about it and need some insight. It's a future conservative president can effectively override many democratic institutions and start turning the president into a totalitarian ruler. So I think this is the idea, is that it's like, it's according to the left, this is a path towards a totalitarian ruler. And so it would enshrine the president as the ultimate authority who never leaves the office and gets rid of all democracy. And it's the end of our country as we know it. Now, is it that? I don't know.
This is just real quick, the very basic U.S. history. I mean, checks and balances would stop that, right?
Right. So you would have to... You would really have to like now, okay, so people are going to look at certain things that have happened. For instance, the Supreme Court recently ruled that the president cannot be prosecuted for actions that he takes as part of his official duties as president. Okay. Yep. So like if his official duty as president, so now immediately, again, the more left side said, if that's true, Biden should send a hit squad and take out Trump and say it's official. And it's like, why was your first thought on the left immediately to violence and assassination? That's a weird thing to immediately jump to when you say you can do whatever you want. But
yeah, that's just humankind though. That's not even
that's true.
A liberal thing.
That's true. But
Cain and Abel.
Okay. And so what they would say is that something like this erodes already some of that check and balance by saying the president is immune. Now they said he's not immune for anything he does outside of his official duties. And so, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they defined what constitutes official duties. Now, you could say the official duties are what are enumerated to the presidential office within the Constitution. That's probably the way that they're going. So the Constitution says, here's what the president can do.
Right.
And so as long as he's acting in that capacity, he can't be prosecuted. Now, that's a weird thing because what would he be prosecuted for? I don't know. Well, and this stems back to this whole January 6th thing.
Right.
It's all just such a mess. And I'm honestly, it's not even close to the election and I'm already tired of it.
So you're saying you're for the monarchy under Jesus?
Monarchy under King. I thought when you first said that, because I haven't seen that meme, I thought you were going to say the monarchy under King George. It's like, get back to the having England control us. Well, that's most of the news is all kind of circling around that right now. So hopefully some more exciting, positive, happy things happen. We'll see, because we've got nothing but politics out of us. Like Trump is going to pick his VP. That's going to be a big news thing. And Biden may or may not step out of the race. That's going to be a big news thing. Whatever happens, we will be right here talking about all of it. So,
and hey, they say, don't talk about politics and religion. So we've already offended all of you, and
that's true.
You're still here.
Somebody I heard once was talking about that, and they're like, that's the worst advice you can, because all it's done is taught us to not actually be able to like cordially disagree still get along.
Or yes, and talk about things that are either close to your heart,
right,
or really not even. I don't think politics should be super close to your heart, but things that impact culture,
right,
and time, current events. Like we can't talk about things that actually matter, and especially with faith.
Right.
People should know that matters to you.
Right. And so if you've ever heard that advice, don't ever bring up, it's not polite to talk about politics or religion. That's bad advice. You've heard it here first. Let's switch that around. Let's find ways to talk about it intelligently, not inflammatorily, and like in a way that helps build each other up.
Like faith and life.
Like your faith and your life. I love that. Well, let's move out of that into our Bible section. Don't forget, if you have not done so already, you can read through the Bible in a year with us. It's not too late to start. So I'm sure everybody hearing this is sick of me talking about this. But in case you haven't heard it, we as a church are reading through the Bible in 1 year. We are, I guess, over halfway at this point, right? And so you can join us. Even if you're like, well, I've missed half of it. That's okay. Read the other half. The one thing that's kind of fun about it, even if you started now, we read through the Proverbs every month. And so you'll get the full Proverbs. And we just restarted pretty recently the Psalms. So we're going through the Psalms twice. So no matter what, you're going to you're going to get like full sections is what I'm saying.
Yeah. We want to encourage you guys to comment. Looking back on like the first day or two, it was kind of like the beginning of a race. Like everyone just sort of like, jumped off the start line, and there was like crazy engagement. And then just, it's been very hit or miss sense, and I understand that. But
it's tough.
Even if you haven't read, even if you're inconsistent, even if you have not read since January 5th, like jump in, ask God to speak to you, and then I would encourage you to throw something in the comments, because it really is encouraging to have discussion. And this may be pushing it. If you post the questions, give your answers too.
Oh, snap.
Right?
I like that.
You don't have to. But we want to know what you think.
You know what might be kind of fun for those of you who are local, who are reading it with us, who are part of all this, maybe sometime near the end or even soon, as like right over the halfway point, we like get together for like a big dinner and just talk. Like we invite everybody who's reading it so far and just get together and talk.
Love it.
Face to face.
Go to a park.
Throw
a Frisbee.
Grill some stuff. Talk about the Bible. We're in Matthew right now, which was kind of fun because we read Revelation and then we jumped to Matthew.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of an interesting, the order that this specific plan is going through is interesting. I like Matthew. One of the things I'd said when this was a little while back, but I was reading the genealogy, and it was kind of funny because, it shows the link from David to Jesus, which is cool. It's showing like he's the Davidic king. But because we've also been reading through, we know about David and his many wives, and then Solomon and his many wives. It's like, you could probably throw a rock and hit somebody who was connected to David in ancient Israel. Like, I'm sure a lot of people would actually trace their lineage back. It's kind of funny. Like, it's cool, and it's important to show Jesus and how he connects into that he is the son of David. But it's also kind of funny because I'd imagine there's a lot of people who would probably trace back to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of wives going on in that line.
Here's an interesting thing. I wonder if you were Jewish now, could you trace and see if you were related to King David?
For Jewish people, I'm not sure. For Gentiles, I'm not sure. But I remember in one of our Bible studies a couple of years ago, we tried to trace back at least like major groups from like Europe and Africa or wherever to Noah's sons. So, I mean, I think you can.
I wonder if you are like, hey, I'm a descendant of King David. Can you go to Jerusalem and like proclaim yourself king?
Oh, yeah, for like Jewish people.
For the Jewish people.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you know the answer to that, please email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com. We are going to jump into our main topic today. Alexis, you and I were talking about this recently, and we thought, let's bring this onto the podcast. It's a good topic, and it's very important as we think about faith and life and how these things connect. We were talking about this phrase, and it's kind of funny because I don't think this phrase itself is actually anywhere in the Bible, but the concept can be. And it's this idea of what does it mean to be in the world but not of the world. So, what do you think when you hear that phrase? What's the first thing that you think of?
Yeah, so it's an encouragement from Paul, isn't it?
Well, so that's what I was going to say. It's not actually, Paul doesn't, these concepts are in there, but really, honestly, I think the biggest place we see this illustrated is in John, and Jesus is talking.
Chapter 17, isn't it?
Correct. John 17, which I've got pulled up. I can read when we want.
So Paul must kind of echo those themes,
he does.
Though.
Yeah, like,
because that's why I'm thinking of it. I don't know.
The word, the concepts and this idea of like holiness, which means being set apart, and the world is throughout the New Testament, right?
Right.
And I think it's really important. And then I'll get back to you for your initial answer of what you think about this. Mm-hmm. It's so important for us to define what we mean, and defining terms on this is really important because the word world can actually give us a variety of connotations. So when you hear this idea, like be in the world, but not of it, what do you think?
Well, I immediately think, God has created us, from like Esther, right? For such a time as this specific world, this culture, this time, like he's placed you and I here for a reason. We're to be in this world, which for now is subject to the prince of the power of the air,
I like that.
Satan, right? So we're supposed to be in kind of a not great environment, but we were created for this environment. So we're in the world, but we're not made of the same substance of this world.
Okay.
So we're supposed to be things like salt, like an agent of preservation and, flavor and good things, and light, like we illuminate darkness, which this world is ever growing more dark, right? Or it feels like it. So to be in the world, but not of it, to me implies that there's a huge opportunity for influence and change and to be something that it needs. Right?
I like that.
That's the initial kind of thought.
Yeah, I think that, really it's like John and then First John. It's kind of funny because I was just listening to another podcast, and he was talking about, how each gospel author has very stylistic distinctiveness. And we know that, even when we have them saying what Jesus said, they didn't necessarily have this concept of a direct quote, which is why in John, Jesus sounds a lot like John, because it's kind of filtered through John's style of writing. Because if you go to First John, it's very similar. It's all about the world and darkness and light and these dualities. And we see that in the Gospel of John. But when we see the world, people can take that to mean so many different things, right? I think when a Christian hears, don't love the world, right? That's the thing that the Bible says in First John. Do not love the world. They think of the people. They think of maybe like the earth, like our planet. They think of things that you do, like what you would call worldly, like going to a movie or eating nice food. Like some people think that's worldly stuff to do.
Okay.
But at the same time, think about probably the most famous Bible verse, for God so loved the world.
Which is the people.
Right. And so this is what I was going to say. It's so important that we understand that when that even that word cosmos is the Greek word most often translated as world. Even when you see that, just because you see that word doesn't mean that they are meaning it to mean the same thing, because it can tell you, John can write, it's sinful to love the world, and then say, but God loved the world.
Right.
And if you have a very strict or literal or wooden interpretation and you don't actually get context and meaning out of a bigger area, it's going to be like it's that ends with each other, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important, like you're saying, the world is the people. God loves us, the people of the world. But there's also an idea of like, he created the earth. He created the physical place we live, and he called it good.
Right.
Right. And so when I think sometimes, again, Christians, and I've mentioned this a million times, so sorry to reiterate it, but I think Christians have fallen, unfortunately, into this kind of Gnostic trap. And Gnosticism was the first big heresy to challenge Christianity. And it came out of like Greek thought. And it was this idea that physical stuff was inherently evil,
right,
and spiritual was good. And so the entire point of Christianity through this Gnostic heresy was find out how to escape this world to get to the good spirit one. And anything physical is like going to be tainted almost. And you need to get to something pure and spiritual, where it's like God said the world was good. God created us to be physical beings. And so I think when I hear people say like, well, this world is not my home, we got to figure out what you mean by that. Because if you're saying like what do we see throughout Paul and Revelation? A new heaven, a new earth, a transformed, resurrected bodies. This world, in some sense, in the physical created world, is our home, because this is where God created us and called it good.
It's funny you say that too, like citing that to other people, because Jesus says that in John chapter 17. Talking about us.
Okay.
They are not of this world, just as I am not of this world. And then later on he says, and I'm not asking, Father, that you would take them out of this world. Otherwise they would not be able to like be here.
Right.
We should actually probably like pull that up and read it.
Yeah. So I've got it, the whole John 17. He says a lot here, but all right. So starting in 6, I have revealed your name, and he's to the men you gave me out of the world. He's praying to God. Jesus says, and the men you gave me out of this world, he's specifically talking to the disciples right here. They belong to you, and you gave them to me, and they have obeyed your word. Now they understand that everything you have given me," again, he's praying to God the Father, "comes from you because I have given them the words you have given me. They accepted them and really understand that I came from you, and they believe that you sent me. I am praying on behalf of them. I am not praying on behalf of the world, but on behalf of those you have given me because they belong to you. Everything I have belongs to you, and everything you have belongs to me, and I have been glorified by them. I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, keep them safe in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one just as we are one. When I was with them, I kept them safe and watched over them in your name that you have given me. Not one of them was lost except the one destined for destruction." That's Judas. So that the scripture could be fulfilled. "But now I am coming to you, and I am saying these things in the world so that they may experience my joy completed in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I am not asking that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them safe from the evil one. They do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Set them apart in truth. Your word is truth. Just as you sent me into the world, so I sent them into the world. And I set myself apart on their behalf so that they may be truly set apart." That's big right there. They may be holy or sanctified or consecrated. And then he keeps going. He starts widening it to believers everywhere. But let's start with there. That's a lot of stuff right there.
And that, always go to scripture, right? Because it's so beautiful. And you get this picture of holiness, to be set apart. It's this idea that, when people say that this is not their home, I think what they're really meaning, the heart cry behind that is like, I belong with God. Right. I belong with Jesus. Right. And we know that, he's going to redeem heaven and earth. Right. So wherever we are, it's our home is Jesus. It's really a person, not a place. Although it will be also a place. So that's kind of weird, but going back to being in the world, but not of it. I think, we were created as spiritual beings, as agents of salt and light, as ambassadors of Christ. And we're going to look different than the environment we have strategically been placed in. I think a big thing that I've been thinking about lately, I hope I can be eloquent. I apologize if it's not coming across, but what I often see and what I would like to encourage the Big C church against is that we are in the world, and we're also of the world, right? Like we can water ourselves down to a point where we're just the same. So we run the risk of that, but we also run the risk of, we're in this world, but we're not participating at all. So we're in the world as Christians, and we have a mission. We have a calling. Luke chapter 4, I think it is, where Jesus said he came for the sick, not for the well or for those who think they believe themselves to be righteous, right? We have this mission and this purpose and this calling. So if we're in the world, but at the same time we're like removed from it, that's wrong. And I think a lot of us can err more on that side. There's probably a lot of us that are worldly Christians, the first side. But this other side is really concerning to me. Another way to look at it is the world has its own traditions and customs and culture. So when you have us, ambassadors of Christ in the world, but we're not actually infiltrating and influencing and being salt and light and helping people and showing people the gospel, encouraging repentance and transformed hearts. Not just modifying behaviors, but, God transforming people from dead to alive, right? Right. We create this weird subculture. Like we're removed from the world, but we're still in the world. We're here, but we're not doing what we're technically supposed to be doing. And everything is scary and everything is wrong and everything will get us dirty. And I don't want to be associated with it. It's an intangible subculture that no wonder the world looks at us and goes, what the heck is that? Right. And no thanks. like you guys are kind of weird and we are to be set apart and holy, and that's going to look weird to the world. Right. But there's a difference between being infiltrative, if that's a word, and winsome and full of grace, and just kind of that scent of heaven on us that makes people curious. And then we're having conversations and we're praying for people and we're seeing people transform.
Yeah.
Dead to alive, like hearts of stone to hearts of flesh, right? So, I mean, I think I have an idea where this comes from, at least for me, where it's been confusing in my faith. We're talking about where faith and life collide, right?
Yeah.
Defining terms is huge, but scripture itself can be confusing. We have a lot of well-meaning, earnest is a good word for it, Christians, believers, who hear things like we need to be in the world, but not of the same substance as the world. But we also see that true religion is taking care of orphans and widows and remaining unstained from the world.
Right.
So you have this command to be in it, but you also have this command to be like, okay, but don't be tarnished by it.
Right.
So what is the solution?
So to me, it comes actually, honestly, back down to that definitional thing is what do we mean by the world? And I think when we put the wrong things in that category, that's what leads to that confusion. That is what leads to us abstaining from everything that even the stuff we're supposed to be being in a part of, right? And so I think the bigger picture that we see throughout John and throughout everything in the New Testament is this idea that it's the world exists in a negative sense biblically when we talk about systems, ideas, structures in place that are intentionally set against God.
Right.
Right. We see that because that's like Satan is the ruler of this world, and the negative connotation. I was looking at where was it? Got Questions, which I love as a resource. The simple definition, they say that the world refers to the world system ruled by Satan. And then when we understand that, we can appreciate Christ's claims that we are no longer of the world or ruled by sin or bound by the principles of the world. And so I think that's really what it comes down to is you have to say, is this something intentionally antagonistic to God, right? So things that are a pursuit of self or a pursuit of money or pleasure for the sake of pleasure, or like if that's the only end goal of something, is it different than what God would have us do? And so I think, like you said, it leads us down these just wrong paths as we think about how we interpret what the world means. And it made me think of, there's a song by one of my favorite artists. His name was Steve Taylor back in the 80s. And he wrote this song called Guilty by Association. And it was a satirical. And I think a lot of people don't know, like satire is one of the hardest things to do because people will often take you seriously when what you're saying seriously is intended to make fun of what you're saying, right?
Right.
Satire is tough. And so the lyrics of this song, he says, I'm going to read just some of these. So you need a new car? Let your fingers take a walk through the business guide for the born again flock. You'll be keeping all your money in the kingdom now, and you'll only drink milk from a Christian cow. Don't you go casting your bread to keep the heathen well fed. Line Christian pockets instead. Avoid temptation, guilty by association. That's how the song goes. And it's this idea that it's like you can take this too far and you can say, I can't ever do anything that might stain me by being around, like I'll be guilty by association if I'm even in vicinity of something sinful. It's like, that's not how Jesus operated. Our lives need to be not participating in things that are against God, but that doesn't mean I'm not, like you said, like in our culture, understanding the things that our culture does and utilizing those to point to God instead. And I'll give you one example, and then I'll get your thoughts on that. But Paul, at times, has quoted pagan philosophers and poets that he was familiar with, right? Paul, in the Bible, we see him quoting these at least two occasions. Now, for Paul to quote a pagan philosopher means he had read them, he understood what they said, and he thought, how can I use this to actually point us back to God? And so I think we see the biblical example, and then we can, of course, go to the famous Mars Hill sermon, where Paul said, I'm going to go to the place where these pagan heathen people are. And I'm going to say, you guys are so religious. You have gods for everything. You even have this unknown God. Now, he could have been like, you're all idolaters and all of that stuff is wrong. But he said, I'm going to tell you who that unknown God is, and pivoted to talk about Jesus. Like, that's really cool and a really powerful example. But he would have to know the culture
in order to influence the culture.
I
love that. I think too, we can confuse our mission and nearness with the world, or nearness with sinners, which, by the way, all of us at one point were sinners.
And still are.
We had, yes, ongoing sanctification, right? Like, I need Jesus, not even every day, like every minute, every hour, right?
Right.
That rescuing is ongoing. But we confuse the mission, being with sinners, influencing the world, with automatically endorsing what they maybe currently struggle with.
Right.
Like,
that's a big one.
It is. It's tough. And I don't even quite know where I want to go with it. But if people don't know God yet, we can't hold them to his standards yet. And so I think, going back to Luke chapter 4, and it might have been 5 where he has dinner at Matthew's house, Luke 4 or 5. I was reading this week, but he said, I came for the sick, not for the well or the righteous. And that infuriated the conservative religious leaders, the Pharisees, and it confused them, and it continued to confuse them throughout his time on earth and his ministry, right? Like, why would you associate with sinners?
Right.
And so the closer we walk with Jesus, and the closer we walk behind him, and we're truly following him, it's not just mental assent to, okay, yeah, I believe Jesus. Cool. Even the demons believed. Like, are you like him? Are you following him? Like, he tells you where to go. He tells you where to go somewhere, and you go with him. There's a difference, right? If we're following him, we're going to offend both the Pharisees in our context, but we're also going to offend sinners because we're calling them to something greater. We're calling them out of that to repentance. So to say that loving sinners, having dinner with them, is endorsing their sin, I don't agree with that.
Right.
I think you have to love people where they're at, show them who Jesus is, show them his love, show them his grace, help call them to repentance, and trust that God knows them better than you do, and he's going to do the work. And the Holy Spirit's going to bring things to light. And then that friend might ask, well, Lex, what do you think?
Right.
And be like, what I think.
Right. It's not, and I think we have to be, on both sides of it. It's a fine line to walk, because it's not an excuse to never let anybody know what you believe, but it is sometimes you don't need to expect them to hold a standard that they don't believe. Right. And I think it made me think of this. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 5, and this might be where you were thinking of before as well, a little bit, Alexis. So this whole section beforehand, contextually, he's talking about church discipline. He's talking about how there's times in which somebody in the church is intentionally, flagrantly sinning, and you need to step in and be like, dude, stop. Right. So verse 9. So 1 Corinthians 5, verse 9. Paul says, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. So right there, people might be thinking, yep, see, you got to stay out of the world because that's where all those immoral people live.
And rightly so. We have these encouragements that say, be unstained, remain set apart.
But what he says, in no way did I mean the immoral people of this world, or the greedy and swindlers and idolaters, since you would then have to go out of the world.
That's the verse I was thinking of.
But now I am writing you not to associate with anyone who calls himself a Christian who is sexually immoral or greedy or an idolater or verbally abusive or a drunkard or a swindler. Do not even eat with such a person. For what do I have to do with judging those outside? Are you not to judge those inside? But God will judge those outside. That verse, we have gotten that so backwards in the church, where we're fine tolerating inside the church gossip or greed or selfishness or pride, and we don't have an issue. But then we see it's Pride Month and we need to go make sure we tell that we are separate from them and that we are not going to be in any way doing anything. And so it's like, he says the exact opposite here. Paul says those who are outside of the church, I'm not saying don't associate with them. In fact, go to them because they need to hear who God is. Right. It's the people who already know better and are still unwilling to repent. Not to say that if you're a Christian and you ever have a single one of these sin issues that you're done, right? I think he's talking about people who are unrepentant, sinning. He's saying that has no place in the church.
Unrepentant believers.
Right.
Right. And so to be in the world, but not of it, again, please be in the world. You are called to it. Right.
Right.
You loving sinners doesn't make you a bad Christian. It makes you a Christian. I'm serious because we laugh, but
right.
It's prevalent. And so, the result of that is a church that is not impactful. It's removed from, it's perceived as holier than thou and arrogant and, again, a weird kind of subculture that we've created that no one really understands or wants to be a part of. If we're just seen as removed from and super judgmental, that's religion. Like, I don't want that. But show me Jesus. I want him. That's grace. That's love. But it is a call to repentance. It's a call to, what I have for you is better. And each one of us struggles with something, right? Like we tend to come down so hard on certain sins, or things that we get entangled in. You are no more far gone than the next person. Right. Like I think of the thieves on the cross.
Yeah.
In our final moments, whatever we've done, we can be saved.
I love that.
That's a good God.
It's a great and good and merciful God.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you got to be in the world, but not made of the same substance. I think the last encouragement with that is, like, I think we've talked with our youth group kids a lot about this. If we're not as strong in our faith, or if we're a weaker brother or sister, and maybe that has just simply to do with, I haven't been walking with God that long. Be careful. I encourage all of us, like, we should have non-Christian friends. Right. There is no point to the Christian bubble, or if you guys have read the July newsletter yet, the piece by our elder, Jim Huebner, is fantastic.
Yeah, it's so good.
Lemonade just staying in the pitcher. Right. It serves nothing.
Salt in the salt shaker.
Yeah. Or the Christian bubble, right? But make sure you're strong enough, because if you go out into the world and you're towing that middle line, right, where you're actually like following Jesus to the point where maybe religious people don't get you and the sinners don't get you. That's the sweet spot. But don't be taken down by the world. We need the church. We need each other to be built up and encouraged and reminded. We need Jesus himself. I think of John chapter 15. He's the vine. We're the branches. Apart from him, we can do nothing. We bear no fruit. It's all, the power is only Jesus. So you have to be solid in that. There's also a lot of like earnest Christians who go out and like they're only hanging out with their friends who don't believe, and that's great. But if you're not rooted, if you're not fueled, if
abiding in him,
if you're not abiding, if you're not sustained, I mean, how easy to be stained by the world. So, I think the theme I'm sensing, even talking it out right now, is just like that balance.
It's tough. It's such and I feel like we've brought this up a lot of times, where it's like that balance in the Christian life is critical, because it is so easy. And it's not just as a Christian, it is so easy to teeter off into an extreme, as opposed to being like, figure out that sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah. You brought up, Paul using like the teachings of local, like pagans and stuff too. Honestly, how confusing maybe would that have been? And we do the exact same thing. Like if we see each other trying to find common ground with the world, or have conversations, or use movie quotes to make a point. It's a silly example.
No, it's a good one.
Hanging out with people that you're like, ooh, Lex, who are you hanging out with?
Right.
Don't assume and don't judge.
Right, that's a big one.
That could be their mission field.
Right, if don't assume that is, like you've said before, endorsement
Lex is going
of
down, or she must support that. Like, no, maybe she's called to those people.
I love that.
And if anything, pray for her. This is getting really weird, meta. Like, pray for that person, not me.
Well, pray for Lex too if you want.
Sure. You pray for them, and maybe you even join them. Like, the whole removed from and I can't be seen with it. It's just, I don't know. I don't know a lot of stuff, guys, but the closer I try to walk with Jesus, that's not it. We're missing it. Right.
I like that.
You're in the world, but you're not made of the same substance as the world. How cool is that?
I think that's amazing.
They should make movies about that.
Well, but the world won't, because they're the world in the anti-God systems would not make a movie about that.
Sure.
But I'm sure Christian filmmakers, that's like an example. Christian filmmakers, stop making dumb movies. Stop making bad movies. Make the best movies.
The point is, I mean, like, think of like Marvel movies. There's like good versus evil.
Yeah.
Star Wars. Yeah. You even get a lot of times like redemption in worldly films. The idea of in the world but not of it, that's a beautiful theme.
That's why every summer a lot of churches do it at the movie series. That's like a thing. I'm trying to think back in the history of Discovery. We have never done one of those, and I'm okay with that. And that's coming from a guy who loves movies.
Well, it's interesting. Okay.
What?
Nathan's advocate.
Yeah, I love it.
Jesus used parables.
He did.
So, I mean, before you jump into your defense,
okay,
it's similar. I think a lot of well-meaning churches and pastors probably use these worldly tools to make a greater point. That's my hope, at least.
I have no issue with saying I'm going to reference a movie. I'm going to show a scene from a movie, et cetera, to show a biblical point. I don't like the extreme example where, hey, we're going to watch 45 minutes of this movie and talk for 5 minutes about a spiritual component. That's kind of a lightweight one, which I've seen churches do.
Well, it just sounds like maybe a pastor who's not prepared.
Right. But if that's every week,
right,
what are you doing? Or it's like, we're going to all dress up as those movie characters every single week and have snacks and popcorn. And it becomes more about that piece of it as opposed to using that as a tool to the real piece.
And real quick, if you haven't seen our episode on whether or not we're allowed to have fun at church,
you're definitely allowed to have fun at church.
We've got an episode on that.
Right. And so I'm not saying don't do anything like that.
It's what's your focus? What's the goal?
You know what? Here's something like, what if you wanted host a movie night at your church, invite your friends, neighbors, where all you're going to do is watch that movie in that evening. And then afterwards, maybe you're going to have a spiritual discussion about it. That would be a way to get a similar thing without saying like our purpose of our Sunday gathering is this, right? Mm-hmm. I think finding ways throughout your life, throughout your week, or even if it's like, hey, have your friends over, watch a movie, but then maybe think of ways you can use that as a launching point.
Sure.
Totally different scenario.
Yeah.
I think it's when that becomes it's like the church that at the Super Bowl, they reenacted the halftime show at their church and they field kicked the Bible across the stage. That's a little not good. Yeah. That's not even a little. That's just not good.
Yeah, we need reverence. We need honor. But we also need fun.
We do.
And
it's like a walking the line.
It's that line again, right? And then the other thing I was thinking too is not being the strange subculture, but influencing the culture. Right. To be less judgmental. Don't assume motives.
That's huge.
Isn't it? It's taken me a long time to understand that. Motives are between each person, each church, each pastor, and God. Motives are invisible between you and God. So it's really hard for me to look at you, Nathan, and be like, well, he punted that Bible across the auditorium because he's a heathen. Yeah. Although the action itself, that action itself is not good.
Right. It's like maybe I stabbed somebody in the face. Well, don't assume motive. Yeah, but I still stabbed somebody in the face.
Okay. Let's bring it home then. You know, Lex takes a friend out to lunch. This person doesn't know Jesus. She's fallen on really hard times. She wants to meet at a local bar and grill. Right. Person C comes in and sees Lex and this person eating in a bar.
Right. Well, why is person C there if they're against it so much?
Oh, sure,
snap.
Sure.
Then you yell at them.
Then you can reverse be judgmental. The point is, don't judge. Don't assume motives. And if anything, I don't know, be in honest relationship and communication with your friends and be like, hey, I saw you, like, what's going on?
Right.
Make sure they're okay. Sure. Yeah. If you're concerned, go ahead.
Right.
But don't assume.
Watch the attitude and the tone.
Watch the attitude and pray for them and join them.
And that line might look a little bit for different people. Sometimes there's going to be like your own personal conviction in something,
Sure,
because maybe it's your past or where, but be careful this is what Paul talks about, like with the eating food,
brothers and
sacrifice
sisters.
idols. Just because they're doing it doesn't make them sinful in that action, even if on some of these gray areas, and this is what people don't like, we don't like, as Christians, rightfully so, we don't like relativism or relative ideas, right? So we like the very clear black and white issues, but Paul does say there's freedom in Christ. And so for some things, not all things,
right.
I'm not saying that any Christian can do whatever they want.
Freedom is it is dependent. Freedom is very gray. And I think gray scares us. Right.
And so the food sacrifice to idols, if you're unfamiliar with that, a big issue in the early church was the temples. They would sacrifice these food to these false gods, and then that food would go on the market at a discount afterwards. And so some Christians were like, sweet, cheap meat, I'm going to buy it because idols are dumb. I know they're not real, so I don't have a problem getting a good deal on a steak. And other people were saying, no, you are endorsing and supporting that pagan institution because now you're buying something from them, and now you've supported idolatry. And Paul says, look, this is going to be a gray area. For some of you, you're going to know in your freedom and maturity that it's not anything. It's just idol. The idols aren't real, and you're going to get a good deal. That's great. Some of you are going to be convicted. Maybe some of them had come out of the worship of, one of those gods. And so by buying that, it's almost like they're back in those rituals that they have escaped from. That will be sinful for them. So there are times where there are things that are sinful for one person and not another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if you're towing that middle line, you're following Jesus, maybe even to dark places, not because Jesus is darkness, but because we are the light and we're called into darkness to light up the darkness.
Right.
It's if you're reaching out and you see things, or you are concerned or don't understand what you're seeing. Maybe you've been protected in your Christian faith for a long time, and maybe you don't understand. You just want to ask. It's not these gray area issues. Well, Lex, I'm concerned because I saw you in a bar and grill.
Right.
It's Lex, I'm concerned because I know that I haven't seen you at church, and maybe you're not praying as much, or you seem sad. Like,
right.
It's fruit of the spirit and works of the flesh type stuff. Those are the evidences we judge by, and rightly so, because we love someone else. It's not these surface level things that like we're legalistic about.
I like that.
I don't know if, I hope this all kind of ties around.
That made sense. I love that.
To be in the world, but not of it. I think it's a grand adventure, I'm seeing it more and more.
It's great.
Walking with Jesus is so exciting, you guys.
I love it.
I want it for you.
Well, that's it for our main topic of today. I want to briefly come back to a segment that I've skipped a little bit. We're going to see how it goes because I like these. Some people have, some people haven't. So I'm going to, again, let me know when we ask the AI anything, what are your thoughts on it? This week I asked it, what are the top 10 examples of somebody in the Bible trying to be in the world but not of it and failing?
All right.
All right. Some of these are a little bit obscure. You ready? Number 10,
ready.
Eli's sons took their priestly duties a bit too liberally by treating sacrifices as their personal barbecue, lost both their lives and their family name's reputation. Okay. So yeah, they did weird sacrifices. Number 9, Judas Iscariot tried to make a quick buck by betraying Jesus, ended up with 30 pieces of silver and a notorious legacy. Was that trying to be in the world but not of it? Well, he wanted to make some money. That's what a person in the world does, but he was too much of it. And okay, King Nebuchadnezzar boasted about his own glory, then spent 7 years eating grass like a cow. Talk about a humbling diet. Wait, what is that? Talk about a humbling diet.
I love how AI is largely like 80s sitcom dads.
Yeah. I actually like that as well because I like silly dad humor.
Absolutely.
Number 7, King Solomon.
Which should actually be your next segment. Just saying.
What, 80s sitcom jokes?
Dad jokes.
Dad jokes. I do love dad jokes. King Solomon tried to balance wisdom with an overabundance of wives and concubines. It led to more idolatry than enlightenment.
True. And also suffering leads to wisdom.
So maybe that's how he became the most wise
so many
man
women
ever.
in his life. He's like, like, I am wiser for this, but I paid for it.
Oh my goodness. Demas left Paul because he loved this present world too much. Probably regretted not sticking around for the epistles. Traveling companion of Paul loved the world too much and peaced out. Number 5, Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. Lesson learned. Never say never thrice. What?
I didn't even follow that one, to be honest.
Never.
Like a bad rap or something.
I like that one. Thrice. Number 4, Jonah tried to flee God's mission to Nineveh by hopping on a ship in the opposite direction. Ended up with an extreme makeover, swallowed by a fish.
See, I don't see how these are in the world, but not of it.
I think it's like they were tempted by things outside of God's plan.
Okay. So, like, if we struggle to understand it, the robots even more so.
Number 3, King Saul tried to mix obedience with a bit of personal gain by sparing King Agag and the best livestock. Didn't end well when Samuel showed up. So again, he tried that one. Okay, I kind of get it. He said, oh, this king, I'm going to let him live, even though God said he shouldn't. And I'm going to keep some of the best stuff for myself. And when God said, destroy it all. And it went very poorly for Saul. Okay, I could get it. Number 2, Samson. In the world, too much. Fell for Delilah's charm, only to get a very bad haircut and a catastrophic eye-opening experience.
I mean, that's pretty terrific, the way that was phrased.
That's funny. That's clever. Number 1, Lot's wife. When leaving Sodom, she couldn't resist one last look back. Result, lifetime supply of salt.
Hey,
Wait, for who? Lot?
salty and lit.
No, that's not the kind of salty you want to be.
No, you don't want to be a pillar of salt. You don't want to be a salt shaker full of salt.
That's true. You don't want to be a pillar of salt
You want
either.
to sprinkle.
Well, let's go lastly into our listener mail segment. Again, remember, please write us at podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com.
I got you.
Thanks. We got one. We must have been talking about this. It says, yes, mustard on hot dogs, fries, and ham sandwiches.
That's totally my mom.
It wasn't actually.
No.
But she did mention in person about liking mustard.
You guys
Somebody
should
else.
email podcast@dfchurch.com and let me know why mustard is awesome.
Okay. Well, this person, so why were we talking about mustard? Matt hates it. I know that.
Right.
I don't know why we were talking about it, though.
I'm a huge fan.
This person said it was a Jesus-endorsed spice and has so many more types than plain ketchup.
Oh, faith is a mustard seed.
Yeah. It's Jesus-endorsed. See, if you don't like mustard, you don't love Jesus.
Oh, no. We're not saying that.
Okay.
That's like a
I'm
meme
not
too,
saying
where
that.
he's like, oh,
Oh, no.
No.
I like that one that I see that it's from one of the Planet of the Apes, and it's the monkey, and he goes, no.
Oh no. Oh no.
Has so many more types than plain ketchup, though. I think that is true because ketchup, you've got what? Ketchup.
what was their actual mail? Sorry.
They said that mustard is good. So I must have talked to it. It was Jesus endorsed and has so many more types than plain ketchup, which I agree because you get ketchup and that's it. Mustard, you can get
Right.
spicy brown. You can get horseradish. You can get garlic. We
I'd
got
have to-
garlic. We got horseradish. We got spicy brown.
I'd have to listen back and see what you guys were talking about because I don't understand.
Why we were talking about mustard?
Yes.
They also then follow. As for the AI segment, so I got some feedback. Thank you. You too can email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. They say it is funny, especially with the images. However, I do appreciate when the topic is more applicable to my faith and life, how to live out conversation starters about biblical content, most important verses related to a topic and why, and less so when it is random Bible and tech, Bible character as a video game. I like those ones. Those are funny. Just because it's so random.
Yeah.
Okay. So topically tying it in maybe helps.
Well, and to clarify, we are allowed to have fun, right?
No.
Okay.
We're not allowed to. No. Listen to last week's episode. Are we allowed to have fun? Yes, we are.
Right.
Yes, we are.
No.
Well,
We should probably have fun if we're going to influence the culture.
it's true. Jesus had fun.
You know, you don't want to
We
be
talked about this last week.
sucking on lemons. and taking a club to baby seals.
Oh,
And that's just
what
our,
if
that's our Christian existence.
but what if you find fun in that?
Oh, different set of problems.
Got a whole different set of problems. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with us on the Faith Life podcast. As always, I'd like to thank Alexis for joining me today, filling in for Pastor Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we will see you next week.